Okay, folks, this is Paul Howes, and I'm introducing David Lambert, or David Allen Lambert, from the New England Historic. I'm up here doing a little bit of research on the Howes families of New England. Turns out, talking with David just now, we actually have something in common. We're both from Norfolk County.
Yes.
So, David, start off by talking to us a little bit about the New England Historic.
Well, the American Ancestors and New England Historic Genealogical Society is an organization that's been part of American genealogy for 175 years. We started in 1845 here in Boston, and this is our current location here at 101 Newbury Street in Boston, where members come in, but we also have people that can visit us virtually. We have over 250,000 constituents.
Wow.
So we're both a virtual reference as well as a physical reference, which is something that's kind of unique in this day and age. We are able to help people of all backgrounds. It doesn't matter if your ancestors came over on the Mayflower or they came over 20 years ago. We can give you the guidance. We have staff that have a wide range of ethnic genealogical backgrounds and specialities. So if we can't find the answer, we'll work with you together to seek out the resources outside of our organization.
Cool. Well, I should say as well that we're up here in the main library of the NEHGS. It's a wonderful place to work. I've been here before. And it's closed half day today on Tuesday. So I managed to catch David in a quiet spot. David, tell me about your interest in genealogy. How did that start? I should say, of course, that you are the chief genealogist for the New England Historic.
I am very honored to have that title. I started doing genealogy when I was 7 years old. I was home from school, and a tin-type photograph fell out of a book, and I asked my grandmother who it was. She told me it was her father, and the idea that my 80-year-old grandmother could have been young enough to have parents was intriguing, let alone I had a metal tin-type photograph.
Wow.
She proceeded to tell me that this is her father, and of course, as a child, I might have lost a goldfish having passed away, and I said, well, let me meet him. Well, he was born in 1848, so the likelihood of that was pretty slim to none since he died in 1921. But she started to tell me stories about him to bring him alive. And one of the stories she told me that was on a whaling ship. So no pun intended, Paul, but I was hooked. And 44 years later, I'm still researching my family and my spouse's family, and so it's quite fun.
Fantastic.
Coming here now, I started working here 27 years ago. And I was a member for a few years before, but it's been a real thrill. I started off in what was the circulating library, the book loan, that doesn't exist anymore, and worked my way up, and now being the chief genealogist for the oldest genealogical society in America is very much an honor.
Yeah, so what does a chief genealogist actually do?
Well, for one thing, having the institutional memory of the organization, having worked here for so long, especially now as we're celebrating our 175th, people will turn around and show me a photograph. Who's that? What is this? I had somebody the other day ask me what a microfiche carol was, the thing that
Really?
was the microfiche on it. You know, we have some younger employees, and I can well respect that. The technology changes, you know, I wish we had DNA back then. So what I do is I work the reference desk part of the time. I also travel for the society. I write articles and lecture, both locally and internationally. So I try to be a representative of the organization as we travel around the country, may it be the Roots Tech or NGS.
Yeah, last time I saw you was Roots Tech London.
Yes, yeah, that was a
You were
delight.
quite busy.
It was. I mean, it's amazing to see how many people that are trying to reconnect with their cousins that had come to America, if you will.
Yeah.
And I think that's true with the Guild projects, that people are adopting not just surnames in one unique area, it's everywhere. And once you come to America, it's just like blowing a dandelion. The seeds are gone every place.
Absolutely, yeah. Every Guild study has to be global, so that's one of the things we insist on. All right, since you mentioned the Guild and your study, talk to us about the pause. And before you jump in, I'm going to say it because I know it's a brilliant line. Just as Drew Smith studies body, and his tagline is "Any body, anywhere." David's study is into the surname Poor, And his tagline is, "My poor relations may be your poor relations," which I think is absolutely brilliant. So how did you get into that?
Well, it was my grandmother who showed me the tintype. It was her father's surname. So my grandmother was Lillian May Poor, and her father had a very comical sign. He was a paper hanger, and his name was Alexander Poor. So it said A period Poor paper hanger. So people would go by and say, "Oh, let's give him some business. The poor guy is a poor paper hanger."
As opposed to being a bad paper hanger?
Exactly, exactly. I suppose that they figured that he needed a little bit of extra help. So knowing the stories my grandmother told me, and she died when I was 11. By then, I had lost all of my grandparents. I wanted to keep the stories going, so by the time I was 12, I wrote my first genealogy book.
Oh my
just a tiny little thing, just typed up and stapled together. There's a copy here, and on the cover is a hand-drawn picture of my great-grandfather. It's like a book report for kids in school. But I was always interested in that one family because that was the connect for my grandmother.
Yeah.
And then realizing, of course, how not so uncommon the name was, and finding the way, by doing the Guild Project, of different counties in England where they went, and of course elsewhere in the world, and how sometimes people choose the surname it's a root origin of a family name for 400 years. It's because they came to America and they were impoverished, so they decided to call themselves poor. Hence, somebody might call themselves rich. So I've met people with the surname that have no connection to England, that are from the Middle East, and that was their surname. They changed it to Poore or Poare and Poer. There's so many different variants of the name. The one thing that's exciting is the DNA, because now I can start looking at the different Y-DNA haplogroups. I also am in charge of the Poor surname haplogroup project on Family Tree DNA.
Oh, you are already? Good. So Gil didn't need to help you with that.
No, I was already looking at the spit tests a long time ago.
Wonderful.
To try to figure out my own branch, because I couldn't get anybody to volunteer to do it. Of course, my grandmother was the line. She was the youngest of her siblings. So trying to get male members of that family wasn't exactly easy. And now, of course, it's sometimes even more difficult with the added advantages that are happening with DNA, but of course people looking at law enforcement and the commercialization.
As a matter of interest, how many Y-DNA samples do you have?
About 70.
That's really good, because I've only managed 110 or so for House.
Yeah. And well, what I really lucked out is when I got it, it was not so much recruiting people. It was more so, it was in a group called Power. And Power and POA are the same. So I was able to say, all right, I want to adopt these people into a separate study. And I didn't pull them away. I just essentially allowed them to have the opportunity to join another surname group.
Cool.
Yeah,
cool.
70 or so.
It's the kind of thing that the Guild helps our members do. So when I set up my study, there were bits of it all over in different surname projects, and we managed to wheedle them all out into one place. Back to NEHGS.
Sure.
Let's combine it with the Guild. So how can New England Historic help Guild members?
Well, first off, you don't need to be a member to come to the library. You can come and visit with a day fee. The day fee is $20. I would suggest to come on a Wednesday, because we're open from 9 to 9.
I'll be here.
9 to 8, I'm sorry.
I'll be here.
And then other days we're open, so we have Thursday, Friday, and Saturday we're open from 9 to 5, and Tuesdays is the exception, we're open 9 to 1. And it's closed Sundays and Mondays. The Guild would probably find useful what we have in there. It's over 250,000 published genealogies and local
it's
histories.
spectacular. I've been in there.
Oh yeah, it's like a genealogist is in a candy shop. People like to refer to this as sort of like going to genealogical Disneyland. What ride do we ride first? Being that family story. The thing I find with our collections is the untapped part is the manuscripts. And as a member, you can get access to those. And we have over 28 million manuscripts, essentially on the floor right below us. And so much so we even have off-site storage with manuscripts that can be called in within a day's notice. So since 1845, we have a lot under the one roof.
Yeah.
So much so we're expanding into the building next door, which will be open.
So you're a society based in New England, but you have members all over the place.
Right.
The
Hence,
Guild has members all over the place. So how could the NEHDS help a British-based member, for example?
oh, well, first off, you need to come to New England. Come and visit. That we always love to have people come and grace our doorway. The other thing is we have a research services department, so someone could hire us to do research on a collection that we have. Perhaps you might just have a consultation with one of us, which we do telephone, online, or even in-person consultations. That's beneficial. For members, we have an Ask a Genealogist service where a person can send in a question, and it's not in-depth research, but enough that we could say, all right, you need to hire someone, or these are the copies that you need, and as a member, you can request copies from collections. So we can be a remote library, as well as being one that a person can still come and visit.
Well, in addition to being 175 years old this year, the NEHDS, it's the 400th anniversary of the arrival of the Mayflower.
Yes, this is
What are you doing?
what we're not doing is probably finding everyone who descends from the 35 million. That's what it's approximated at, 35 million, Paul, descendants from the Mayflower passengers around the world.
Wow.
And so this is a commemoration. I'm not just dealing with Massachusetts, of course. You're dealing with 4 nations. You're dealing with the Wampanoag Indians. You're dealing with the Mayflower colony here in Massachusetts. You're dealing with Leiden, and you're dealing with England.
Yep.
And so this is really a global commemoration.
It is.
And
I know there are some Guild members involved in the commemoration in Plymouth on the other side of the Atlantic.
we're doing publications. We're doing lectures. We're doing trips globally to different of the sites that the Pilgrims came from, and even site tours here in New England. We're going to be doing a lot of outreach, as we have already with the Wampanoag Indians. We had a lot of dual celebrations. As you may have saw downstairs, we have a replica of the Mayflower that was commissioned for us, and also a wonderful piece that is a Wampanoag woman with her child that was actually commissioned and made by members of the Wampanoag Nation. So kind of you get both sides of the story.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, David.
My pleasure.
Greatly
Thanks for
appreciate
having
it.
me.